everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today here on the channel we're going to be talking about The Nun 2. So The Nun 2 is the sequel to 2018's The Nun, but still a prequel to 2016's The Conjuring 2, and this one was directed by Michael Chavez, who has directed the last two Conjuring universe films, The Curse of La Llorona and The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It. And The Curse of La Llorona, not great. The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It, it's not as good as The Conjuring 1 or 2, but it's still pretty good, so I kind of see why they want to stick with him and see what he can do with The Nun 2. The first Nun was an absolute atrocious mess. That movie just did not work at all. It felt very generic, very bland, other than some good set design. It really did the Nun character a disservice. The Nun character was so scary in The Conjuring 2. She stole the show. That's absolutely why she got her own spin-off movies. And I was excited to see this, even though I hated the original Nun. But if you guys remember the first Annabelle film, the first Annabelle film was really bad. But then the second Annabelle film was actually really good. So I thought, okay, maybe with a second film, they learned their lessons from the first film, and we would get a better Nun movie. Mainly because I really do enjoy the Conjuring universe, even if they're very hit or miss. For the most part, we've had two classic films in this series with The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2, but they've had some good ones in there. But for the most part, you know, we kind of just get a bunch of swings and ground rule double almost, where it's very average, nothing too offensively bad, but the first Nun was pretty damn bad. So I wanted to check this one out, and I'm sorry to report that The Nun 2 is just not that good. I was really excited for it. You know, spooky season's here. This is the kind of the perfect spooky season movie. And the trailer, which I try to stay away from trailers, but the trailer actually had some pretty good scares in it. Unfortunately, those were some of the best scenes in the movie were from the trailer. A lot of the jump scares in this movie are just, you know, let's turn up the volume and have something jump out at you. We know it's coming, like they're setting it up, like you see the nun in the background, and you just, because that's the best way to use the nun character. Have her in the background where you don't even realize she's there, and they got those glowing yellow eyes. You just know, like, when you see her in the corner, that eventually at some point she's going to jump out at you. Oh, whoa, she did. Oh, what a big surprise. And there's a lot of that in this movie, a lot of fake jump scares, like just many generic horror tropes. There's bullies in this movie just because we have to hit every single horror trope in the books. But it does actually surprisingly build up to a pretty good third act and conclusion. I wasn't too surprised by it. There was a line that I knew was coming between Storm Reid and Taysa Farmiga's character. I was like, about 30 seconds before Storm Reid said the line, I was like, I know exactly what she's going to say. And then sure enough, they said it, so it's very predictable. But you know what, that third act, I can't say it was a complete failure. It was pretty entertaining because the first 2/3 of this movie was just so boring. It had no reason to be that boring. I understand what they're going for. They bring back Irene and Maurice from the first Nun movie, and Taysa Farmiga does a fantastic job acting. It's incredible to me how much she looks like her sister Vera Farmiga. It really looks like this could be the origins of her character in this universe, so it's really incredible to me how much they look alike. I mean, that's how genetics work, so that makes all the sense in the world, but still, it really does. There's times when you look at her for the right angle and you're like, is that Vera? It blows my mind every time. She's probably the best actress in this movie. Even as much as I like Storm Reid, I feel like she's kind of just along for the ride. Even the way her character gets involved in the story is really just like, hey, I'm piggybacking off of this, and I don't really have too much to do in this story, but she does a good enough job acting. Storm Reid is one of our great up-and-coming actresses. She did a phenomenal job in The Last of Us earlier this year. This movie's just too generic. It's ugly to look at. It suffers from what all modern-day horror films suffer from, at least studio releases. What they're doing with the independent movies from studios like A24 and Blumhouse are in a different league, but a regular Warner Brothers or Paramount studio release, for the most part, they're going to hit every single trope. The cinematography is going to look exactly the same in all of these movies, where we got to create like this haze in the background, overexpose the lights coming through the window. You've seen it a million times, and unfortunately that stuff is just so bland and boring. It is going to date this movie in 10 years. You're going to be like, oh, look at that, an early 2020s horror movie, just because they all have the same exact look to them, and nothing really stands out in this movie. No scares. Yes, there were a couple good jump scares in this movie, but for the most part, nothing really too eerie, especially for a religious horror movie. With so many good ones out there, this is just going to be one that gets lost in the crowd, and it's really a shame because I was excited for it. And if I was going to give this film a score of 1 to 10, unfortunately, I have to give The Nun 2 a 5 out of 10. Just very bland, straight down the middle. You might get some good scares out of it. It's a good spooky season movie, I guess, if you want to head to the theaters and you want to have something to scare you. There's enough jump scares in there. You might have a good time with like a couple of your friends or buddies. Maybe have a couple of drinks before you go in. You might get something out of it. But for the most part, this is going to be just very bland and boring, and I feel like you're going to leave that theater disappointed. But anyway, guys, if you enjoyed this review, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, get out in those streets, and tell your friends about us. And we'll be seeing you around.